Hello, everyone. It's Sunday, 15th December 2024. We apologize for the late start today. Had to get a few things in order here. We move closer and closer to Christmas 2024, and we move closer and closer change of government come elections 2025. And we invite you to join us in that movement for change, in that movement for the rescuing of this nation from the vultures that attack our oil resources, and for those who seek to keep us in the dark, both literally and figuratively. My guest today is Mr. Winston Jordan, former Minister of Finance in the Partnership for National Unity Alliance for Change Coalition. Mr. Jordan, welcome to Nation Watch.
Thank you very much, Mervyn. Season's greetings to you and all your listeners, and it's a pleasure to be back.
Well, I'm thankful that you accepted the invitation to join us again, because there are some very interesting bits and pieces in the media that touch and concern the performance of a government with which you are integrally involved, a government in which you manage the finances, manage the economy of this country, and now stand accused of a number of stand accused by a gentleman who styles himself as an economist. You worked for several years in the Ministry of Finance, in different departments, in several capacities, including Director of Budget. And you worked as Director of Budget for several years under several presidents, including Bharat Jagdeo. I believe you worked as Director of Budget when he was yet a junior minister as well. The records will show that Winston Jordan was the architect behind the budgets presented by Bharat Jagdeo as Minister of Finance, and budgets presented by the government when Bharat Jagdeo was president. Now Bharat Jagdeo says to the nation that Winston Jordan was kept on at the Ministry of Finance out of his charitable heart, his kindness, his sympathy for you. That you were, in fact, no biggie. You never entered a room where policy was made. You knew nothing of that. You worked on ratios. and he was the big wig, so to speak, around these things. Where does Mr. Jagdeo get off calling people these names and treating people with that level of disrespect, people from whom he can learn still, if he has the capacity for learning?
Yes. Okay, because I wanted to know why you're saying who he had learned from and still learning from. Because as you well know, it's programs like these and my program Kedaki and the others where they harvest information from and then go in the back room and try to make policy out of them. And we have several instances of those. But let me backtrack a bit, because I want to deal a little bit, if you give me some time, on that story. Yeah. Look, when the government came into power in October 1992, I wasn't in Guyana. I was on a one-year Fulbright fellowship, the Hubert H. Humphrey Fellowship in the United States at Penn State. It allows you to be attached to a university. I was attached to Penn State University, and then it has all other facets of it, including visits to various American institutions, study tours, and all these kinds of story. All right? I came back in July of 1993. I was a tenured public servant, meaning I was appointed by the Public Service Commission. So Jagdeo couldn't keep me on. I was a tenured public servant. He couldn't get rid of me or keep me on. I was appointed by the Public Service Commission as the first Director of Budget. Previous to that, I was transferred to the Ministry of Finance from State Planning Secretariat in 1985 to help establish the very office of the budget. So not only was I integrally involved as a director, but I was the one who was identified to go and help establish it. All right? Good. They came in 1992, as I said. I wasn't around. 1993, I came back. And when I came back in 1993, I felt a coldness in the ministry, with two political commissars running and creating havoc in the ministry, Jaglio and Ramon Gaskin. As far as I could remember, Jaglio played no particular role in the ministry at that time. His days were spent on the wharves and in running with COMU, not CANU, COMU, Customs Operations Monitoring Unit, because they were trying to, Customs Monitoring and BAS, Bobby's Anti-Smuggling Squad, right? That was where his energies were in the initial time when he came to the thing. He was also identified by the Carter Center, right, for towards the two countries. I think one in Africa and one somewhere else. Good. So out of that largest, Carter Center had asked him, after they decided to hold a conference on Guyana, and because they were always in this thing of trying to bring the parties together and economic development, right, which ultimately led to the National Development Strategy, right, that Carter Center pioneered, right, and funded and so on. So they had this conference at Tower Hotel, and apparently the Carter Center asked him to do two short papers. They didn't want no long paper, two short thing, maybe 5-6 pages, right? And they had a format that they set out that they wanted to be done. And they'd asked him well in advance to do it. Coming close, meanwhile, the Carter Center people heard about me, because I was the body director, heard about me, asked to see me. I told them fine. They came, we had a good, decent discussion. And they asked me if I could produce a short paper, they said no more than 3 or 4 pages, highlighting some of the key issues. And they gave me again the format that they wanted to be done. And I quickly did it for them, short shrift, gave it to them. And there was a girl in it, and she thanked me profusely. She said, this is the kind of thing I'm looking for. And she'd been asking government officials for the papers prior to the conference agenda get going, and she couldn't get it. And there is this guy, walked into my office. He didn't speak to me at all since I came back in July. Had no contact with him. Suddenly walks into my office and, trying to ease himself in and so on, and then says, I have this thing with Carter Center, and they asked me to do some paper, but I've been so busy, I didn't get time to do it, and so on. And he wants to know if I could assist him with it. And I agreed to do it because I was the director of budget, your guy, political person come here, ask, so long and short, I did it. And obviously the Carter Center liked it, accepted it, and so on. And I'm telling you, from the ending of that conference, it was, I think, a 3 or 4 day conference, this guy held on me like white on rice. I suddenly became the person for him to attach himself to. Because I am telling you, prior to that, I heard about him and his behavior from a very good friend of mine who was the supervisor at State Planning Secretariat, Gene Evelyn, God rest the dead, he died last year, right? I heard about him and his behavior and so forth. And so when he came, I already had the files on him, essentially, but I didn't let him know. But he obviously knew, because he knew that Gene was my good friend and so on, all right? So after then, I had that was 1994. I did the budget. I did the 1994 budget. Asghar Ali was in charge at that time. Subsequent to that, me and Asghar Ali had a big argument, very, very big argument. It only came to some amicable arrangement after Edgar Heliger stepped in.
Yes.
And
tax chief at the time.
He was advisor he had finished that. Korshed had taken over from him, and he became advisor in the ministry. Right? Principally to establish the GRA, the Ghana Revenue Authority. Right. Edgar stepped in, Asghar apologized, but I had it with the ministry, because what I saw was ethnic discrimination, racism, everything you could think about. There was so much apathy in the ministry and so on. I said, no, I gone. So I resigned effective that August, and went to the private sector and so on. That same night, that same day I resigned, Jaglio called me at home Jagdio called me at home, said he heard that I resigned, wanted me to come back. I said, no, I'm not going to come back any public service. And so I said, no. And then in that conversation, expletives and all kind of things, cussing out Asgar and so on, right? But I said, no, I ain't coming back. I continue working at Semco, right? Which Semco was in Middle Street, upstairs the Majestics. I worked there with Semco, and Rojano, God rest the dead also, because he's dead also. He came to me around May and said, you know something, you're going back to Ministry of Finance. I said, why? How you know that? He said, Jagdio wants to go back there. And so said, so done, right? By the June, he called me and tell me, man, come back in the ministry. I said, no, I'm not coming. But he said, no, I'm going to pay you as a consultant. And there was a consultant there named Sodi, who was under UNDP arrangement, but apparently he didn't like Sodi because of this work and whatever. So he told me he's going to give the rest of Sodi's contract to me, which he did. And I became the advisor in budgeting. That was 1995. And I worked there for 12 years because I left the ministry in 2007, unlike what he's claiming that 2014 that he worked. Now, I know a program is short and we got a lot of things to discuss. So I want to read from the Hansard. This is the Hansard. I want to put it up there. This is the Hansard. It's the 9th of December 2016. And it pertains to my wrapping up of the 2017 budget that was presented in 2016. Okay? And I want to read, bear with me, it's a couple of minutes, 3 or 4 or 5 minutes, right? And it will give you the whole gist of everything, including all this thing we claim, but he's policy, and he was in some room dealing with policy and so on. I can take it to. So it says, I have been associated with 25 national budgets. That was in 2016. I was saying that 25 national budgets. I do not think anybody is around who could say that he or she has been associated with so many budgets in such a short time. So when I tell you something about budgeting, you have to bring somebody equal or better who understands budgeting. And then a member, you know, the usual parley in Parliament and so, honorable member, Mr. Barrett, Jagdio said that he taught you.
He thought about you.
Yeah. So here's me. Yes, I heard something about the Honorable Barrett Jagdio in some policy room shaping policy. You see?
Yeah, same language. Same language.
I tell you, when ants there in ground, not store them up. I had resigned from the Ministry of Finance in 1994, and the honorable member became a senior minister in 1995. He made phone calls and sent out SOS signals for me to come back to the ministry. I said to him that I will not go back to the ministry in the capacity of a public servant. And he said that was no problem, and that he will pay me to be a consultant. I said, okay. Sometimes one sees red, but if one sees green, that is no problem. Right? I went back to the Ministry of Finance in 1995. The honorable member's force budget, that's Jagdio's force budget, will have been in 1996 because he was appointed Minister of Finance before June. I was trying to help him to prepare the estimates and the speech. I indicated to him that I was prepared to write every other section of the speech, but he must do the introduction and the conclusion, because that was the place for the politics and so on. I did not really want to get involved in politics. I guarded my technical status zealously. My comrades here will tell you that I have that attitude even up to today. So I told him to do the introduction and the conclusion, the political parts, and I will do the body, and he will pull them together. I was in my office writing, and I went over to his office to ask about a policy. When I entered the office, there were about 18 pieces of balled up paper. I asked myself what the hell was going on here. I picked up one of them, and there was the first line with something. And I asked what was going on. He said his thoughts weren't flowing. I said, okay, I can come back. And so when I went back, subsequently, the office door was locked. He had gone. The long and short of this story is that I had to do the introduction and the conclusion. Mr. Speaker, if you think I'm telling an untruth, go back to the 1996 budget and compare it with this budget, 2017 budget that was presented. Compare 1996 with 2017 budget. Like a fingerprint. you will see certain phrases and a writing style that will tell you that indeed this was the true. I have no reason to come here and tell a lie. The Honorable Member, Mr. Jagdeo, has never produced a single budget at the Ministry of Finance. Never, ever. We need to know these things. I am a professional and kept these things very quiet as a professional. I left the ministry and did not have to discuss its business. But the Honorable Member seems to come here every time during the budget debate to extol some virtue, billions of money that he performed at the Ministry of Finance. At the Ministry of Finance, the Honorable Member was not known for such elegance or brilliance. There are people right here in this house, sitting among my staff, who will tell you that every budget I wrote at the Ministry of Finance under the PPP government was written from newspaper articles that I had been cutting out during the whole year. I could not get a schema, a plan, or a program for these people. I have witnesses who are still around who could confirm this. I can call the International Monetary Fund resident rep at that time, my good friend Dr. Ibrahim Fall, who will confirm what I'm telling you, because one day he walked into my office and asked me what I was doing with all the newspapers. I said to him that no one will tell me anything. So as time was running out, I will have to write the newspaper. I will have to write from the newspaper articles. I religiously kept cutouts throughout the year trying to see, based on newspaper clippings, what might be the policy in certain areas. For me, it was grievous to come to this house to hear the Honorable talk about budget and economics, which should not even have entered this house. It is really grievous. My art is practiced on the basis of solid academic training, buttressed by solid experience. I do not need any honorary doctor of philosophy, whether part or otherwise, to prove my word. I have been to some of the finest universities in this world, and the People's Friendship University does not count among them. That is the piece I wanted to read from you from the Hansard, 9th December 2016, in relation to the 2017 budget.
Yep, this gentleman is on record as saying that he kept you out of the kindness of his heart,
Yeah.
an act of charity.
Yeah.
The duplicity he seeks to debunk slaps him in the face.
He has. I could only come to the conclusion he has a level of intellectual inferiority. Intellectual inferiority.
But the leader of the opposition often says that Jagdeo is challenged in that regard.
He is challenged. Yeah. I know, because I spent a while with him in the Ministry of Finance, and he is. I can tell you, when he became president in 1999, he asked me to go over to the president. I refused. I think that's where the souring of the relationship started, because I continuously refused.
You wanted his angel,
right?
But you, along with Terence Campbell and Nigel Hughes, stand accused of being racists by Jagdeo in his most recent rambling, his monologue that he usually has once per week. I raise this issue because you mentioned early up in your presentation a moment ago that you felt the presence of heavy racism in the ministry and it frustrated you. I'm wondering if you could find that clip where this whole question of gene pool come into question and the allegation. Somebody read deeply into this particular letter that Mr. Campbell wrote and may have advised Mr. Jagdeo, so he sees deep into it the way one would see Chaucer's writings. So let's see if we can find that clip and have you address this particular assertion by this gentleman.
So the Ali administration has stormed pell-mell into massive expenditure on infrastructure without any structured attention to the basic needs of a large segment of the population, which has been punishing under the daily burden of meeting ends meet, cost of living again. So again, they have this big...
We'll come back to this one. But he did refer to something Mr. Campbell spoke about having to do in his letter to the press, published by the Stabrook News, saying that his genetic predisposition informed a certain action. So his assertion, Jagdio's assertion, is that his gene pool come from his parents. His parents are Indian, and therefore, by extension, Mr. Campbell may have been speaking about all East Indians. And he speaks about Nigel Hughes repeating the same genetic predisposition, and he said that you too. And then he went on to say that it's racist. Comment, please, about Mr. Jagdio's accusation of anyone as being racist, having regard to what we know of Mr. Jagdio himself.
Well, I'll slight correction. I don't know, based on the clip that I heard, that he accused me of saying that his DNA, it's inherent in his DNA. But what he was trying to associate clearly was that I was also implying that some level of racism. I don't know where you can get that, because I maintain, as I have maintained in the past, that the way how the coalition government was treated compared to the way how PPP governments have been treated suggests that only one kind of people should be ruling Guyana. That is what I said, and I maintain it, and all the actions. I mean, you can imagine, for example, the bricks that came down on us for the PSA, and rightly so, okay, to make it public. I mean, we had our reasons why we didn't want to make it public at the time when they wanted us to make it public. But ultimately, it was made public, right? Civil society was involved, the opposition was involved, the private sector commission was involved, everyone, everybody, the media, everybody. Compare that treatment to the PPP today, who, since they've been in power for almost 5 years already, has never made available to the public, to the parliament, a single document beyond the ones that they are by law required, like the loan documents that they have taken. They have not made the documents in relation to the two mines, the two gold mines that they have signed with the Canadians. They have not made those documents available. They have not made a single document in relation to the gas to energy project available. They have not made any one of these documents that have been any document requested. The Commissioner of Information has been written to for information. He has not made, as far as I know, as I am aware, a single, or he has not been able to get a single information, even basic information, like who got the contracts in the exhibition 2 years ago, the advertising contracts, who got them and so on. He has not made a single. So, and nobody's coming down on the government like a ton of bricks for these opaque arrangements, this inability to respond to the needs of the public and so on. In other words, then I'm saying again, the treatment of the coalition, and we may come to the salaries part. You know how much problems everybody came down on us on the 50%. Everybody came us on the 50%. But nobody is reminding Jagdio that he said right there and then that if they were to come to power,
they'll reverse it.
They will reverse it.
Yeah.
What has he done? Nothing. Nothing. He hasn't even given us a courtesy of indicating why he kept the 50% instead of doing exactly what he said. He said he was going to negotiate the contract, renegotiate the PSA. He has done nothing. He has found a reason why he doesn't want to do it. Okay? So and as I said, Glenlal is carrying the attack, but the private sector, the civil society, and all these people who came down on the coalition at the time. So I have come to the conclusion that it appears that only one kind of people and one set of people can rule this country. Now, if you want to infer that I meant Indians or so on, you can do that. I didn't say Indians or any sort of thing. I said one set of people.
And that could be class.
And that could be class. And in fact, it's class I had in mind. But if you want to enforce union, you go ahead. You go ahead.
Oh, this pops up every time the PPP is on the back foot. This issue pops up. Whether it be one of the trolls on our programs in the comments section, or in this case, Jack Dew himself. In speaking to the Natural Resource Fund, Jack Dew spoke. I don't know if the clip is available because it's very difficult going through 5 minutes of Jack Dew's presentation, much less 2 hours.
Horrible.
It's sickening, really. I mean, the language. Jack Dew's language in this press conference, I mean, I've never listened to more than 5 minutes of Jack Dew, but I listened to some of this. The language tells you that you're dealing with a raving mad person. If you, as a former president, holding the fort for the president and directing the president's every action, and you use language like this gentleman used in this press conference, I mean, what example are you setting for the children of this country who want to emerge as political leaders? But that aside, Mr. Jordan, in speaking to the Natural Resource Fund, among the several things that he said is that the design of the legislation at the time was there to enable certain things to be done. And one of the things he referenced is, he said something like, stealing the $18 million. And then when he caught himself and recognized that that was debunked, he said, as they were planning to do or whatever it is. Now, my understanding of the signing bonus is that instead of lumping it into the consolidated fund, having it lost and spent, when I say lost, I mean among the other several sources of funding, a decision was taken by government to put it in an interest-bearing account and reserve it for particular use. And so while it was there sitting, waiting its use, it was earning money. That's my understanding. But Jack Dew and the PPP persist with this thing that you, Winston Jordan, and the government you served, you were either singularly or collectively attempting to steal 18 million United States dollars. Talk to Mr. Jack Dew. Talk to Mr. Jack Dew.
Well, we let me put it this way to you. We have, as you well know, done this explanation over and over, but we will do it over and over because that is the only mantra they have, right? And it seems to resonate with some of their supporters, not all. When they are in trouble, they run with stealing 18 million and so forth. All right? But the reality, once again, right, because Kyle Greenidge had done a special in Parliament, and it's reproduced in Trotman's book, that whole speech that he gave in Parliament on the signing bonus and whatnot is reproduced in Trotman's book. But essentially what happened, and again, as I indicate to you, Guyana never got a signing bonus in the true sense of the word and in the true sense of understanding what is a signing bonus. A signing bonus is negotiated on the discovery of something, of some natural resource, mainly a natural resource, or a signing bonus associated with athletes who are top athletes who are going to sign for some club and them sort of thing. What was negotiated with ExxonMobil, or the approach to ExxonMobil, and all this is secondhand information because I wasn't there. This was what was told to us by Kyle Greenidge, who was one of the apparently 3 negotiators with Exxon. What Exxon was approached for financial assistance to pay lawyers and other related expenditure to fight our case of the border controversy with Venezuela. That was what Exxon was approached for. They weren't approached for a signing bonus. in the way how I just explained signing bonus. My understanding, based again on second-hand information from Carl Greenwich, is that Exxon says that they could not hand over monies in that kind of manner. And I also feel that Exxon did not want to be associated or in any way being seen to be favoring one side against the other, because as you well know, Exxon had a lot of assets in Venezuela and so on. And they're still to collect on the monies from the expropriation and so on. So it apparently was agreed that this thing will be put in the context of signing bonus. How we got to 18 million, my understanding again from second-hand information from Carl, is that the base was 10 million. Why 10 million? 10 million was paid by CGX on behalf of the government of Guyana to allow the government to allow its case against Suriname when Suriname ill-advisedly sent gunboats into our waters to eject the CGX rig. So Exxon is the one who paid the 10 million US for Guyana to approach UNCLOS and the expenses associated therewith. So that was the base, 10 million. And adjusting for inflation and so on and so forth, they came up to 15 million that is going to be used for the purpose of paying lawyers and other expenses, research assistance and all these things. An additional 3 million was thrown into the pot for training in oil and gas, recognizing that Guyana had a paucity of skills at that time, because we're talking here 2016, had a paucity of skills, and they were going to put this treatment. Hence 18 million. Again, from second-hand information from Carl Greenwich, it was explained that Exxon would like to see this amount for transparency and accounting purposes. Hence the opening of a special account in the Bank of Guyana with the name Exxon Mobil signing bonus account. That was the name of the account. I got it on my phone here. The 2 receipts that were given to us when we transferred all the money eventually to the Consol Fund. That was the account there. It was then managed by Bank of Guyana in the same bank, Federal Reserve Bank of New York, that they hold their reserves. It earned interest and so forth. Ultimately, we transferred the money in 2019 January. All the funds, including all the interest, well accounted for. I got all 2 receipts I could send you right now. Let me put it on top of the
Please do.
on the thing, right? 18 plus million that was transferred to the consolidated fund, right? So that was that. But let me tell you something. No, again, as I tell you why I will continue to say that this is a one-sided country. Nobody is asking Jagdeo or the PPP to account for the 10 million that CGX paid on behalf of them.
I was coming to that.
Monies that never came into the public accounts of this country.
I was coming to that
Never.
because the public record speaks of it.
Nobody has asked the government, the PPP, and the government, and Bar Jagdeo, because he was Minister of Finance at the time, and then subsequently became president, to account for the $1+ billion that was in the Petro-Carib special account in the Riggs Bank in the United States of America. Nobody's asking him for when we came into power in 2015, $800,000 was left in the account that had over $1 billion US.
Well, Mr. Jagdeo, that's the question for you. It's directly put to you by former Minister Winston Jordan, who you kept on out of charity. Mr. Jordan is asking the question, and we're appealing to the public media to pay attention to what is being discussed, particularly here at this moment.
Mervyn, don't go on yet. Please don't let I'll rile up. Don't let me think yet. Nobody is asking the government for public information on the amounts that is paying that Hess is paying for carbon credits. I have over 200 million US.
But I have some concerns outside of value. I have process questions. I have questions regarding consultative approach. I have questions regarding free, prior, and informed consent of the indigenous people. I have questions concerning the violation of the Armenian Act with respect to setting up a finance committees in those villages, peopled by PPP activists and all that. I have an abundance of questions in that regard. And um, if we can get to the bottom of the numbers, what's the committed number? What's the basis? What does it mean for the standing forest? Are there penalties for harvesting standing forest subsequent to the payout of monies? Those are questions. Yeah, those are questions that we have. I want to.
No, but we have to let the public know. Hess has promised to give us nearly 800 million US dollars. 800 million US dollars. This money is being, over 200 million apparently has been given so far. It is being held in a special account in a bank, I believe in New York. I say I have to believe, but I don't have the but I understand it's being held in a bank in a special account. The very thing that these people claim that we were doing wrong, it's not going into the concern fund directly. It's being held in a special. And you got, I could bring up so many more. It will last through this entire program. But nobody, not the accountant, not the auditor general, not civil society, not private sector, nobody, not the media, nobody is pressing the government for the details, like how they press the government of the coalition. At one time, we published in the press the account balances of the signing bonus account. You remember?
Yep.
And then we among the ask and jump in and hello, we get a little bit interest and all this kind of thing. So it's moving, the goalpost always shifts as it's related to the coalition government. But this government is getting away with the proverbial murder. And you tell me on the basis of that why I should not conclude that it appears that only one kind of people are destined to run this country in their minds.
So I want to shift to this whole business of the natural resource fund, which I believe is the fund that the health funds are going to enforce having regard to
the carbon credits, the basis of it.
And we don't yet know where it's going and all that, but it should be, in my view, placed in the natural resource fund. But I want to, and I ask my viewers to bear with me. I'm going to burden you with a little bit of Jack Dio. I know how difficult he is to listen to, and that's why perhaps he gets away with a lot of what he says, because no one really pays attention. But we paid attention to this little piece here, and I want to share it with you, and as the basis rather for what I'm going to ask Mr. Jordan on this particular subject. Here we go.
We had around oil receipts. Great transparency. Today, no country in the world has that provision. Every time you receive a payment, it goes in the official gazette, Parliament notified, and if three months pass, you can charge the minister 10 years in jail. Not on the app, that would have never found any expression in any law that they pass. Next is that we introduce a board of directors. So under the law on that Jordan and the others passed, guess who had the powers to manage the fund? The central bank at the direction of the Minister of Finance, Jordan. So he had powers to manage this whole fund. So guess what we did? He complains about the board of directors now. I see all of them complaining. I'll come to one called Terence Campbell later who complained about this. But the board of directors, they don't have enough information, as somehow this board of directors is less transparent. That's what they're arguing, than the powers that the minister has vested in him. And look at the people on the board of directors. See who they are, and I want you to do your homework and you will see who they are. They're people with more integrity in a little finger than Jordan and all of the others combined, the Campbells and everyone else. So somehow they're making it seem as though the board of directors to manage the fund is less transparent than the minister having all the power. We introduced the board. So they're saying, the president shouldn't appoint the board, but who appoints the minister? The president would appoint the minister, and he alone was there had management responsibilities for the fund. So we can all agree as a country that this was a great change that we made to enhance transparency. The third issue was we simplified the formula for transfer. So they had all of these committees, a fiscal committee, a macroeconomic committee, but at the end of the day, the amount that would have been transferred every year from the NRF to the budget would have come not based on a formula, would have been based on the discretion or the judgment of the Minister of Finance. So he could decide one year, I want all the money to come in. Another year, I want only 5%. The Minister of Finance, in his sole discretion, would have decided how much money will move from the NRF to the budget. That was changed to a formula now. The formula is predictable. Everybody knows it. The minister doesn't have any discretion no longer. The formula sets the upper limit. There was no upper limit to withdraw any money under the minister's discretion. No upper limit whatsoever. He could have drawn all of the money. We set an upper limit, so still allowing room to save in the fund. So you can agree with me that you would want the formula in our law to determine the transfer than Jordan or any minister. That is infinitely more transparent now if we're talking about transparency. And we put a simple formula. We have the Public Accountability and Oversight Committee that does a report that goes directly to the Speaker.
Mr. Jordan, it was Jagdeo who chose the term duplicitous in the middle of, or in the early stages of this conversation, this monologue. Now here he is telling the world that you were a one-man show.
Yes.
And they put in all these communist committees.
Yes.
But all these communist committees are appointed by him and stamped by Ali. So in the end, he is the one-man show. He doesn't go to cabinet meetings. You as minister was subject to the authority of collective cabinet. Talk to us. Tell us what's...
Mervyn, it was nauseating and sickening listening to the lies after lies after lies that Jagdeo sat down last week Thursday and indicated. Let's debunk every one of them right now.
Please
right
do.
now.
Please do.
Okay? First thing is, he has a fixation with Jordan.
That dates back to a few decades.
That's right. Not the Minister of Finance. Right? It's as if Jordan going to be there in perpetuity. Right? He can be there all the time. So it's Jordan thing. This 2019 Act and today's papers, I'm so happy to have read the Ghana Human Rights Association in Starbuck News today. Beautiful. A scathing attack on this NRF and its management, right? And they reference the green paper, and I work with the green paper because a lot of people may not remember it. right? This paper that informed the 2019 Act, ask them which paper informed this act, who they consulted on this act, right? That's the first thing. Secondly, this 2019 Act had substantial assistance from a number of partners. The main one was the Commonwealth Secretariat. You can go to any number of quality sovereign wealth funds. And by the way, in 2019, we were admitted into the International Association of Sovereign Wealth Funds, and we attended their first meeting late 2019. This same 2019 Act. This 2019 Act mirrors several acts in which the Minister of Finance, as opposed to a board, is given the authority. Because it's the minister who ultimately has to report to the cabinet and has to report to the parliament. So this is not something that is taken out of it. You can go to several, Argentina, Chile, all these different places, and you will see it's the minister who's responsible. So you bringing in a board, don't necessarily enhance this, but let us see your board that you bring in. Because he's talking about people who are on the board. It's not the people who are on the board. It's the systems, procedures, functions, and everything of the board that will determine the board's relevance. Not the people you could put. You could put all kinds of people. And you got all kinds, right? You got all kinds that you could put. You ain't going to put people who are against you on the board, right? You're going to put those who are close to you and very close to you, which is why you do it anyhow. Listen to these functions of the board. Now, first of all, the whole board is appointed by the president. So you're talking about the minister, but the whole board is appointed by the president. And they don't meet to determine who's going to be the chief, the chairman of the board. It is the president who identifies who is going to become the chairman of the board. Look at there right here. It is the president who appoints the chairperson. Now listen to these functions of the board. At section 5.5, the board of directors shall be responsible for the overall management of the fund. You know what is the fund, Mervyn? Here is the definition of the fund in the definitions part of the act. Fund. Fund means the natural resource fund established under section 3. You understand what I'm saying?
Yep.
The fund is the entire fund. So the board is responsible for the entire fund. Not a thin slice of the fund, but the board sees its function as managing a thin slice. Whereas the law says the board is responsible for the overall management of the fund, the entire fund, not a thin slice of the fund. This is their act. This is their act, not ours, 2019 Act. This is their act. Second, the board is responsible for reviewing and approving policies of the fund. My friend, where are these policies of the fund? Do they have policies of the fund? If they have, it's a well-kept, guarded secret in the vaults of Buckingham Palace or one of these places. Nobody knows what are the policies of these funds. It's not gazetted anywhere. It's not in newspapers anywhere. Nothing. What are the policies of these funds? And you have been operating now 2+ years or 3+ years or whatever the case may be. Then you have monitoring the performance of the fund. Again, the fund is the entire deposits in the natural resource fund. That is what is here. How are you monitoring the performance of the fund? When you don't know what the government is doing with the amounts that they're taking out of the fund, you don't know. The fund doesn't know. This board that you're cherishing doesn't know. Then at D, it says ensuring compliance with the approved policies of the fund. What are these policies of the fund? What are these approved policies of the fund? What are these policies, and how are you ensuring compliance with these policies? Are you telling the government something about the amounts that they're withdrawing? What are the policies in relation to those amounts that they are withdrawing? Then the board is supposed to be exercising general oversight of all aspects of the operations of the fund. All aspects of the operation of the fund.
And these are minions of...
One aspect of the operation of the fund is the withdrawals by the government. How you oversighting those? How is the board oversighting the withdrawals of the government? You have it here. This board that he's talking about. This board that he's trumpeting is what he's talking about. And then lastly, they have here, ensuring that the fund is managed in compliance with the Act and all other applicable laws. Well, that one I don't know, but these others here, what it is. And he is trumpeting this board in relation to the structure that we had. Listen to the structure that we had. We had a structure where you have a macroeconomic committee. Anybody will tell you a macroeconomic committee is clearly needed because of this large amount of money and its impact it can have on the economy. Okay? And we had a fiscal committee. Okay? He is saying that how Jordan could withdraw anything, all the monies and all this kind of story. Nonsense. We had a formula. We had a formula, but the formula is too rich for his level and too rich for all the people who he associated with. So they didn't understand the formula. So they said, get rid of the formula. Get rid of the formula. Put in something where it's easy to withdraw all the money in the fund. You tell me how in heaven's name what they have put in here, where you're literally draining the fund, can be superior to what we had.
But one of the questions...
No, don't I ain't finished yet. He says how we had no upper limit and lower limit, right? He says we had no upper limit and lower limit. At section 24 of the 2019 Act, you had two distinct responsibilities. The macroeconomic committee was responsible for determining what was called the economically sustainable amount that can be withdrawn from the fund. Then you had a committee established by the Minister of Finance called the Fiscal Committee that was responsible for putting up what is the fiscally sustainable amount that could be withdrawn from the fund. Right? It's like Congress. Congress got Senate and it got House of Representatives. Each one of them on a bill does their own thing. You understand? And then they try to bring the bill together until the bill has identical clauses and things and so on. It can't pass, right? So the intention here was the same thing. You have that independent macroeconomic committee and you have this other independent fiscal committee, okay? And then they will come together to determine what is the amount. However, if they cannot agree, section 24 of the 2019 Act says this: the economically and fiscally sustainable amount for a fiscal year shall be the lesser of the following amounts: A, the economically sustainable amount for that fiscal year, and B, the fiscally sustainable amount for that fiscal year. To break it down for your audience, let us put it this way. The macroeconomic committee met. They determined the economically fiscal sustainable amount is $1,000. The fiscal committee met. They determined that the fiscally sustainable amount is $1,500. And remember, this is the one that is formed by the Minister of Finance, $1,500. They come together, they can't agree. The law says that 1,000 is the maximum you could withdraw from the fund, not the minister's 1,500. 1,000. Look at here, section 24.
The question that bites, though, is Jagdio's assertion that what they have for a formula means that the minister cannot withdraw all of the money. But the minister has, whoever the minister is, I believe the minister is really the president, because Dr. Singh is the senior minister within the office of the president with responsibility for finance and the public service. Now I got to breathe after that. So my recollection tells me that they have, after any withdrawal, left $0 in that fund. On every occasion, they've withdrawn all of the money, as far as I can recall.
Well, they can't withdraw all of the money based on the formula because it has progressively percentages coming right down to 3. But because the percentages are so high in the first 3, from 100 to, and it's the 100 for the first 500 million, 75% of the second 500 million, 50% of the third 500 million, 25%. So ultimately, they're not withdrawing monies based on any formula that talks about absorptive capacity, inflation, growth, and all these other things that would have informed our formula. Let me quickly put it. All these other things that had to be taken into account, they are going to withdraw monies willy-nilly, based on some percentage formula. It had nothing to do with the economy. If the economy is overheating, no problem. We still got this money coming in. Whereas the reason for the macroeconomic committee and the fiscal committee in their determination of the sustainable amounts for the next fiscal year is to take all of these factors into consideration. This formula here takes none of the factors into consideration. And that is why I cannot understand what is the purpose of the board. What is the board meeting for? The board doesn't even meet to rubber stamp the government's withdrawal from the fund.
This is
so when you come and tell me, the board has people who have more integrity than Jordan and all this kind of thing, that's red herring. I couldn't care less who you got on the board.
Well, quite frankly, Mr. Jagdew,
total red herring.
Mr. Jagdew is not the person to speak of integrity.
In any case, he's not. So I dismiss that with with this disdain and the scorn that it should get.
More duplicity. I want to shift away from this in the interest of. In fact, we're going to go over time. Let me announce that we're going to go over time.
But one question before we move off.
Sure.
So he talks about this 2019 Act gives minister the powers and how they put in board. This board, that's why I want the journalists, I'm talking right now to the journalists, do y'all homework, right? This act has been around since 2021, December midnight. So you got ample time to have read this act. And when it goes there, sometimes you can talk to it, you got questions. This board that they have put in here is subject to the dictates
of the minister
of finance.
Who is the president?
Or whoever it is.
Yeah.
I give you some quick thing. Part 3, governance and management of the board. The board is responsible for preparing the investment mandate. Provided that the investment mandate and the operational agreement and any changes thereto shall be subject to the prior approval of the minister. So what are you reaching for? What are you meeting for? Not to rubber stamp? You meeting to rubber stamp? You can't approve anything without getting the prior approval of the minister. You merely rubber stamping what the minister would have done in the first place.
And then the minister has the authority to deal with issues after the board has
Next
dealt
one.
with it.
This is one where they stymied in the parliament the Petroleum Commission, this one here. But they have it in their law. The board of directors shall, in the discharge of their functions, report to the minister and shall provide such information reports as the minister may require. Same thing they had in the public in the thing law, and how the minister too much minister direction. Next one, 5.8. Section 5, subsection 8. The minister may give to the board of directors such general policy directives in accordance with this act with respect to their functions as the minister considers necessary, and the board of directors shall give effect to such directives.
So establishment of these boards really amount to cosmetology.
Yeah. But I can't let you go, man, without listen to this. He talks about the Public Oversight Committee. Oh, no.
Baton.
He talks about the Public Oversight Committee. Listen to our Public Oversight Committee. First of all, our Public Oversight Committee had such importance. It had such importance that it appeared at part, it had such importance, right? That it appeared before the management of the fund. The management of the fund appeared in part 4. But the Public Accountability and Oversight Committee appeared in part 3. That is the level of importance that we had for this committee. Now, hear what our committee was responsible for. The Public Accountability and Oversight Committee. Hear what it was responsible for. 1, monitoring and evaluating the compliance of the government and other persons with the provisions of this act. The compliance of the government. 2, monitoring and evaluating whether the fund, this is the whole fund, has been managed in accordance with the principles of transparency, good governance, and international best practices, including the Santiago Principles. 3, providing independent assessment of the management of the fund and the utilization of withdrawals from the fund. My friend, you understand that one? And the utilization of the withdrawals of the fund. This is what the Public Oversight Committee had at 3, right? And at 4, facilitating public consultations on the management of the fund and utilizations of withdrawals from the fund. Those were the 4 extensive functions of this board. This board was 22 members, broad-based. Let me quickly run them down. A rep from the civil society, a rep from women's organization, a rep from youth, a rep from the Bar Association of Guyana, a rep from the Consumers Association of Guyana, a rep from the Guyana Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, a rep from the Transparency Institute of Guyana, a rep from the Guyana Press Association, a nominee of the Trades Union Congress, a nominee of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Guyana, a nominee of the Private Sector Commission, 1 nominee from each of the 10 regional democratic councils, and a nominee from the University of Guyana, right? Don't run, hold on. They take our Public Accountability and Oversight Committee, emasculate it. And this is what they want, they put for this Public Accountability and Oversight Committee. You see, they're right here. Oh, yes. The committee shall, A, receive quarterly reports from the board of directors on the operations of the fund. When you receive it, what the hell are you going to do with it? Let me hear now. You, the Public Accountability and Oversight Committee. And 1, your first function is to receive quarterly reports from the board of directors of the operations of the fund. And 2, only 2 functions they put for them. Meet no less than quarterly with the board of directors of the fund to be briefed on the operations of the fund. That's the end of your Public Accountability and Oversight Committee. And for that, they got 5 members. Now you tell me in heaven's name, how this could compare with what we had here. And not only that, this Public Accountability and Oversight Committee, here we talk about how we had withdrawals coming from the fund and not going into the consolidated fund. This committee, to ensure that there was no political interference, no president was appointing the chairman and deputy chairman. The appointment of the chairman and deputy chairman occurred after the first meeting, when they meet as a collective of 22. They would decide amongst themselves who will be chairman and deputy chairman. President wasn't appointed. In our act, the Public Accountability and Oversight to make certain that they did their work and so on, they were going to be given a secretariat. And that secretariat would be financed by a direct charge on the Natural Resource Fund.
Independence.
That is the level of independence we wanted for this committee. No, he run around and they had money going from all this and things. Let me tell you something. This is the only committee that was going to be so financed because of the level of importance. And what does direct charge mean? It means the same thing as in the regular budget. The Auditor General, the Supreme Court, all these people are direct charge on the consult fund, which means first of all, the budget of this committee had to be approved by the Public Accounts Committee of Parliament. It's right here and here. Once approved, it becomes a direct charge on the Natural Resource Fund. And those monies would have been withdrawn and put into an account at Bank of Guyana. All of this is in this act. All of that is in this act. That account then becomes a sub-account of the Natural Resource Fund, because in accounting for the withdrawals from the Natural Resource Fund, all the auditing and everything and the accounts and the movement of that account will have to be subsumed in that reporting process. So he trying to stain my name, impugn my integrity, right? By calling my name directly into it. But you know, as I said, I know this individual, right? I have my own descriptions for him, but ultimately the public is seeing it, so I don't need to put it out there.
He chose the word duplicitous.
Yes.
And in his ramblings, he said, he condemned the signing that PSA, the agreement. He condemns it. In his campaign, in the run-up to elections 2020, he and his candidate, Ali, at the time, spoke very eloquently about the defects, as they saw them, of this agreement, and emphatically told the people of this nation that the first thing they were going to do was to renegotiate that contract. Because the government of which you were a part at the ministerial level did an injustice to the people of this country. So first thing they were going to do is renegotiate that agreement. Today, they are saying that there's the issue of sanctity of contract. They met this, and one government is obliged to continue the works of another government in good faith and these kinds of things. Duplicity. Again and again.
Flip-flop.
And with the old people used to say to us when we were growing up, with a brass face, tells the people of this country, we can't renegotiate this contract. But right alongside that, you can play the video that said, the first thing we'll do is renegotiate that contract. Now, Mr. Jordan, that said, without that contract, where would Mr. Jagdeo and Mr. Ali and the People's Progressive Party be getting money from to do the projects that they're suggesting that you, as Minister of Finance, did not do in your term? Without this agreement, where would the money have come?
Well, any serious analyst on the economy of Guyana would have known that when you look at growth rates prior to 2020, they were mostly single digits or negative. The industries that had so boldly supported the economy over the years, they were failing for obvious reasons, right? I mean, sugar was in its death throes after we lost the quota and the price in the European Union, right? Bauxite, again, because we used to be known for our calcined bauxite. I understand we control over 80% of the market at one time. And we commanded prices and so on. We lost that, right? Rice, here or there. People believe that Venezuela was the only time that we had inflated prices for rice. But under the Eric Williams government, Eric Williams had paid for rice many times over at the time when the oil crisis came. Okay? So a lot of people don't know the history. And so on. So the growth rates that we were getting were marginal, minimal, and could not bring us to the transformation that we would have required. We were looking for something. And while we were looking, we were engaged in agreements that weren't necessarily beneficial, as if you were in a better position. We got OMI came, we have people came in the forestry, and you get a 2% there, 5% there, and in the case of Omar, he left a big scar on the heart and with the tailings pond story and so on.
Yeah, cyanide spill.
In the first time in the history of this country, we have got access to resources that will allow us to realize dreams that we were only dreaming about, and that is the oil and gas resources, right? People keep comparing us with Suriname, for example. Suriname, look how long it took Suriname to get one FPSO, an agreement going. And that field that they have they say roughly 780 million barrels, right? 780 million barrels, which is a medium size for us here, okay? They aren't going to expect force oil, until about 2028. Anything can happen between now and 2028. Anything can happen. So even though they have a development agreement that's taking place, you know how investors see. If oil prices started trending downwards, they could just decide they pull out and write that off as a expense or so on. So Sonam has to hope between now and 2028 that nothing untoward happens to oil prices to force Total not to continue with the operations. As I said, those are big multi-billion-dollar multinationals, and they will comfortably and easily write off some of the investment they have put in there, rather than continuing an arrangement where the price does not allow them to recover the investment. Compared to when 2015 they found oil, the cost was low, and so we weren't in a situation that they so now will find themselves in. And you got money coming. Now, having said all of that, I agree. I join the band of all those who are asking for the contract to be renegotiated. I agree. In fact, there's a beautiful letter in today's Sabbath News, I think it was, by some guy named Yip or something like that, where he showed that after years, Quebec electricity company or something like that has been able to successfully renegotiate a contract that was in perpetuity, but had been to the disadvantage of the receiving people of electricity. And they've been able now to amicably renegotiate the contract. And I see nothing wrong. And they all had all the things too about sanctity of contract and all this kind of thing. And they're a developed country. I see nothing wrong in writing to Exxon, initiating the process of renegotiating the contract. Until you do that, you do not know what will be Exxon's response. You don't know. We know that it's both of us got to clap hands to come to an agreement. So I will initiate it, and we could come to the table and let us see what is in it for me, what is in it for you. That is what I see. Okay, if the negotiations go south, they go south. But you can't just keep sitting down and hollering sanctity of some contract, sanctity of contract. And you don't even write a letter saying circumstances have changed. And in the context of those circumstances, we would like to sit down and initiate the process of renegotiating. And while you're renegotiating, the contract that you have right now will continue. I will get whatever money I'm getting and proceed with whatever development. But you cannot just keep sitting down hollering sanctity of contract, and without negotiating.
For me, it's the duplicity.
It is.
You know, and it's there, and it's glaring, and it's in every aspect of government's operation. Now, more duplicitous behavior. Jagdeo criticized the APNU AFC government, and you in particular, and former President Granger, over 50% ministerial salary increase, which we know to have been a one-off increase. I don't think ministers got increases thereafter for the life of the government.
Yeah.
But Jagdeo needs to tell the people of this country about his own salary increase as he was about to exit the office of president of this country with no hope of being re-elected, having regard to term limits. And Jagdeo needs to tell the people of this country in the same way, with the same emphasis and the same expression about his engineering of the former president pensions and other benefits act. I hope I got the title correct.
Yeah.
I remember reading somewhere that Jagdeo gave himself 500% salary increase as he exited office. And that laid the basis for a fantastic rate of pension. And he needs to tell the people of this country why you had to go back to the parliament in the AP and UFC government to put caps on the benefits that he had accorded himself in terms of numberless security personnel and motor vehicles and limitless expenses and so on. Talk to us, please, about this.
When I see Jagdeo talk about salary, you want to puke that such a person could sit down talking about salary and people 10% and 50% and so on without reminding people what he took. But let me remind people, get your coffee and your biscuits. Remind people.
We're going over time, and before you remind us, I want to remind our viewers that it was Jagdeo in 1999 who said public servants are going to get 2% and not 1 black cent more. Remember that. This is what Jagdeo said. But today he has the blessing of oil resources, and he still does not offer equitable, sustainable salary increases to the public servants. But we'll get into that a little bit later after you talk about these benefits.
When Jagdeo was Minister of Finance, and I was in the ministry advisor, one day he came to me and he said, Winston, man, there's no way that we can seem to give these ministers something more other than salary increases. I thought about it. I says, not really. But the next day, I said, you know something? It hadn't been done before, but perhaps you might think of increasing their vacation allowance, the annual vacation allowance, well above the 1 month salary. He said, okay, that's a good idea. Think about it. Because they were mortally afraid of attempting any salary increase beyond the 5 and whatever percent they were given to the workers. They were mortally afraid of taking more, and they were complaining because the salaries were low, right? And perhaps that might have been a reason why in that period you heard all of these allegations of massive corruption and all kinds of story, right? But they could not increase their salaries when both dragons were alive. And even when I gave him, because our salaries, I was paid in US dollars for 12 years. But so are a number of other people. A number of names I could call who are in the dead courses that I was paid US dollars, and Brassington and all them people were paid US dollars. I was paid US dollars for being an advisor. So much for charity. Right? I show you people who listening would love to be have that charity given to you being paid in US dollars. Okay? Right. So get this. Jagdeo became president August of 1999. August of 1999. At a time when he had a big story going on with GPSU, because he inherited from Janet Jagan.
Mm-hmm.
He was the Minister of Finance.
Yes.
Who advised Janet that he can't give more than 5%.
Yeah.
Right? So,
but he had to color the cent black, if you remember. When I was growing up, was red cent, but he colored it black cent. So I don't know what's the significance there.
That's August, right? A mere 4 months afterwards of coming into power, December 20th, 1999 to be exact, Luncheon wrote the clerk of the National Assembly to the effect that approval had been granted for increasing vacation allowance for ministers from $240,000, which was 1 month's salary for them, from $240,000 to $420,000, a 75% increase. He couldn't do it under Cherry Jagon. When he approached me to find out how you could increase these ministers because they're complaining, he couldn't do it under Janet Jagon. 4 months after he got into office, in 1999, Luncheon was writing the clerk that with effect from January 1, 2000, the vacation allowance of ministers will be increased from 1 month's salary to $420,000, which is well 75% above the salary.
But does Mr. Jagdeo know that 75% is greater than 50%?
You see, that's what I'm telling you. When you sit down and you listen to this guy, you want to puke. That's such a, because you see, he is dependent on people not remembering or not knowing. Because these aren't details that people generally will follow. These aren't details that people will follow. When we came in May 2015, President Granger, in his wisdom, to obviate all these problems that you had under the Ramatar government and the Jagdeo government and the Jagon governments in relation to this salary and the disgruntlement of their ministers and all this kind of thing, agreed for some salary changes. Now, this business is about 50%. I have debunked it on several occasions, and today I will debunk it again. Not everybody was paid 50%. And before I go down the road, let me make it very clear to our listeners. The leader of the opposition's salary and emoluments are tied to a senior minister's salary and emoluments. And so too is the Speaker of the National Assembly. Okay? Mm-hmm. So, 50% increase was given to 13 senior ministers, one leader of the opposition who was Jagdeo at the time.
You mean Jagdeo got the 50%? I mean, Mr. Jagdeo, you didn't tell us that part. You told us about Mr. Norton. I mean, come on, man. Grab a mirror, Mr. Jagdeo. Grab a mirror. You got 50%. The same 50% that you complained about and the same 50% that you said when you get back into government you were going to reverse and never did.
And never did.
The same 50% that your ministers were instructed by you not to spend, that they'll give it back when they get into government. And it never happened.
Never happened.
Mr. Jordan, let's stop.
Yeah. Again, 13 senior ministers, not the entire cabinet, 13 senior ministers got 50%. The Prime Minister got 10.7% increase. And why? Because it was found when we went in there that the Prime Minister was getting less than the Attorney General. The Prime Minister's salary, who was subject to income tax, even though it was subject to income tax, was less than the Attorney General's salary, who was getting a tax-free salary. So if you were to gross up the Attorney General's salary and compare like with like, he will be getting substantially more than the two I see recognized in the Constitution. So for a small redress, not a big one, a small redress, it was decided to give the Prime Minister a 10.7% increase that would tilt him slightly above the AG. In fact, that 10.7% took the Prime Minister's salary to $1,715,000, compared to the AG's tax-free salary at that time of $1,250,000. $712,485. So a slight thing. But still, the AG, in take-home terms, kind of fantastically more than the Prime Minister. Then the junior ministers got, 9 junior ministers got 20% increase. 9 got 20% increase. Even the AG got an increase of 5%. The AG got, even despite the fact that he was getting a thing, he got an increase of 5%. The chief whip got an increase of 12.5%. The chief whip is only 1. Parliamentarians, opposition parliamentarians and government parliamentarians, there were 40 of them, they got a 20% increase. The leader of the opposition, 1, got a 50% increase. The deputy speaker got a 0.8% increase. And the vice president was a new position. They got 0%. Their salary was new. So there was nothing to compare it to compare it to. That was the thing. But yes, so let's talk about Mr. Jagdeo. Let's talk about Mr. Jagdeo.
Mr. Jagdeo.
Yeah.
This is
So in 2004, Jagdeo cast it be introduced and pass the Pensions President Bill 2004. His salary by 2006 was 200.
which year the legislation? What year?
2004. Okay, and that is the pension. This is the pension, not the benefits bill. This was just the pensions bill. I mean, think about this guy. Think about this guy. The benefits bill is another bill.
Yeah.
This new bill essentially moved the needle of the president's pension from 7/8 of his salary at the time he exited office to 7/8 of the current salary of the current president in office.
For doing nothing.
For doing nothing.
For just simply being a nuisance.
Now, can you let us
To borrow
before I
words.
go on? This thing is so rankling. It's so rankling that consider a person who served 30 years minimum in the public service and is entitled to a pension only gets that pension calculated, I think, at 2/3 and then adjusted for gratuity and all these kinds of story. A president is taking 7/8 of the current salary. So he's not losing. He's not losing. Every time the salaries go up of a president, automatically. He doesn't have to go through all these rules that we got to go through right now. Notice in this 10% that they give, no mention is made of pensioners. No
Precisely.
mention is made of pensioners.
Precisely.
Right? So that is the kind of person who's sitting down here and lording it over the serfs and telling them about 10%. Right? Okay. So his salary in 2006, when he was demitting office, right? No, not he was demitting office, when he was finishing office for Storm, I think. 2006 was $223,783. $223,783. That was his salary. So if he were to leave office in 2006, if he didn't win elections to serve another 5 years to 2011, then he would have got 7/8 of 223,783, which would have made him $195,810. That would have been his pension if he had left office in 2006. So the man's smart. The man decided, no, I can't work for $195,000. I can't get $195,000.
Is that smart or greedy?
Well, smart and greedy, in this case, probably go together, right? So what he did with this new bill, right? What he did with this new bill was that he then had to move his salary. He couldn't allow his salary to be going up by these 5% and these 6% that he was given to the public servants. So he found a way to move his salary from $223,783 to $1,304,503.
At a time when public servants' increase was what?
30-something%. Between the period 2006 and 2011, Jagdeo's salary moved from $223,783 to $1,304,503, or 500% increase.
I remember the 500%. And what was the average rate of public servants increase at that time?
And the public servants during the same period, the minimum wage in 2006 was $26,069. By 2011, the minimum wage had increased to $35,657. 37.5% over the 5 years, or 7.5%.
A classic case of...
So his own move by 100% every year in the 5-year period for 500% overall, compared to 7.5% of the man at the bottom. And you sitting down there and pampersetting?
A classic case of 4 legs good, 2 legs better, as per Animal Farm, George Orwell's piece.
So let me give you a quick thing. So over this period, 2011 to 2006 to 2011, their increases towards 7.5%. We came in 2015, and in a mere couple of months, we increased the minimum wage by 26.5%. Folks, you got to understand numbers. You don't like me because I know numbers and I know how to analyze them. You don't like me? Here you talk about how I ratios, and it's them same ratios that allow the government to pass every IMF target under the IMF programs that we were in, and thus allow us to get new funding from the international institutions, from the bilaterals, and also debt relief. And it's the same lack of attention to paying to ratios that caused me the trouble in the 70s and the 80s.
I want to touch on some of the benefits here, Mr. Jordan. This is what Mr. Jagdeo engineered for himself, in part, so that he can enjoy these benefits after the meeting office of president. Payment in respect of expenses incurred in the provision of the use of water, electricity, telephone services at his place of residence in Guyana. Free water, free light, everything.
Free tolls, free everything.
Service of personal and household staff, including attendant and gardener. Of course, we said that was capless when it came out in the first instance. Service of clerical and technical staff, again, that was capless. He could have any number of persons he wanted when he demitted. This was changed by the coalition government to specific numbers. Free medical attendance and medical treatment or reimbursement of medical expenses incurred by him for the medical attendance or treatment of himself and the dependent members of his family. Full-time personal security and services for presidential guard at place of residence. And again, that was uncapped. He could have any number that he wanted. The provision of vehicles owned and maintained by the state. Again, any number. Toll-free road transportation in Guyana. An annual vacation allowance equivalent to the cost of 2 first-class return airfares provided on the same basis as that granted to serving members of the judiciary. Tax exemption status identical to that enjoyed by a serving president. And of course, we heard about the 7/8 of the salary of the sitting president, and that would be pensions. I believe $36 million a year.
Right.
Was the number that
simple thing like no toll. For example, if he wanted to cross the Barbary River, he don't pay toll. A simple $200 across the Demerara River, he ain't got to pay. No road tolls, no bridge tolls, no taxes. All of these things. Vehicles, 2 first-class tickets, annual vacation for he and spouse. I think to England is the thing, or the equivalent in cash. All these things. Now you have, for example, NIS pensioners, people who are general managers and so on, suffering on minimum pension, and since 2019 have not gotten an increase in their pensions.
And the law specifies how that increase is supposed to be applied. It has to do with minimum wage, and it has to do with salary increases for public servants.
Yes.
And it's ridiculous that only minimum wage pensioners are afforded that increase.
And after,
which means that some people earning above the
Above the
minimum
minimum
pension
wage.
end up at minimum pension.
minimum pension, right? And they flouted the law for 3 years.
Yeah.
3 years, and they only applied the law from 2024 January and never paid the back pay. They've never paid the back pay for flouting the law. But then who are they? They bring retroactive law and apply it currently. In the case of a case with GRA, remember?
Yep, with the motor vehicle.
With the motor vehicle. This is a government that is out of control. But as I said again, had this occurred on the coalition,
the media would have been all over the place, all over you. But I want to shift. We are on overtime, ladies and gentlemen. We are on overtime. But we won't go for much longer. I know that your soup might be getting cold. The oil resources are here. The oil revenues are here. Jagdeo, duplicitous is the word he chose. Jagdeo is the one who resisted salary increases for public servants. Jagdeo is the one who said, if you pay these increases, you will create inflation. Jagdeo said that. The same Jagdeo and Mr. Ali decided that they were going to pay out cash grants.
Mm-hmm.
$60 billion it was, the first number that came out. We don't know what the number is now, but 60 billion is what came out. And it was to have been instantaneously paid out.
Correct.
Instantaneously takes time, it seems. But this 60 billion coming into the economy in that one shot wasn't going to cause inflationary developments. Inflation wasn't going to take place with this 60 billion. But to pay 20% salary increase to workers, which will be spread over 12 calendar months of the year,
right,
would have caused inflation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Jagdeo says that you and the PNC, of which I'm a member, criticize them for this cash grant because it can cause inflation.
Yeah. Yes.
And he didn't see that as being possible.
Yes.
Help us understand the mind of this man that you know, that you helped, that you schooled over the decades.
Well, I saw a comment by Terence Campbell, his nemesis, this morning. Somebody pointed me to it. And Terence said that something to the effect that he tried at Baijaval Multilateral, which is where he went to, and Patrice and People's Friendship University. Jordan tried with the Yesu tried later on, but nothing seems to be. Was a really up comment indeed, because I don't understand why this guy continues to dabble in areas that he has no, I wouldn't even say training, but he doesn't have a comprehension of, essentially. I really don't understand. I mean, because it is clear to me. You got an economy that is overheating. An economy that's overheating, you got to bring the fire hose and cool it down. But they don't care. They got to get their roads built. They got to get their lampposts put up. No matter if they're going to fall down and create havoc to people's lives, and so on. And to hell with the small man who's suffering bitterly. I saw my wife went to the supermarket, and oh God, I see that list there, and I actually, how you can manage, much less the ordinary person.
Yeah.
Prices have gone through the roof within a week. It was expected. As long these people know, they prepare for it. You're gonna pay back pay. You're gonna pay bonus and all, and pay hourly salary and so on, and they can afford to jack up the prices, which they have done. People don't know. We keeping thing of tracking of prices, and from only 1 week in the same item, you should see what the prices are shot up. So this genius thinks that he could pump $60 billion into the economy, or even half of it, at a time when he's paying back pay and bonus and all these things, and it will be everything is all right, it's hunky-dory, and so on. Well, listen, maybe they teach them kind of economics at Friendship University. But in modern economies, Western economies, because we are not a socialist, we are Western and integrated in the Western economy and so on, they don't teach them kind of economics, and it don't happen like that. Already people who don't get in the back pay complaining bitterly about what it can buy and what it can't buy. But these are the people who came out when 2018 the Buxton proposal came out. And they had some very derogatory things to say about cash transfers. They didn't believe in it, and they said they're going to make people lazy and they're going to make people this and all kind of story. They're the ones who said so. They and the acolytes who said so. Now they're trying to spin and say how we don't want cash transfer pay because we claim it can cause inflation. No, we didn't clear that. We didn't say that. We're the ones who were pushing and promoting the cash transfer. But what we were pointing to is that you were paying all this money all at the same time, and it became meaningless for these people. And the length of time you pay, the longer that you took to pay it, is the least the money can do. October the 10th, you said instantaneous. This is December the 15th. And only a few people in Letem
under some really terrible
conditions who have received the money. We're not against transfer. We're the ones who are promoting cash transfers. We were the ones who were promoting cash transfers, especially in light of what is happening. But like as I said on a program, I think last night, what they are calling cash transfers is really monies to cushion cost of living. That's what he said on October the 10th, to cushion the cost of living. And it cannot be compared with Surinam's cash transfer. Surinam's cash transfer, the president there said specifically that it was to reward the citizens for their patience and all they went through, and to recognize that their citizens must share in the patrimony of their natural resources. That is what their cash transfer is based on.
But we don't know what ours is.
That's what I'm saying to you.
There was no articulation of any position.
No position.
Just said we pay this money out.
We pay this money. But that's what I'm saying to you. Initially, when they said household, it was to cushion the impact of the cost of living for 2024. Then when we start boring holes into it, that you want to cushion impact of 2024, but you starting from January 1, you limiting the people to January 1, 2024, and all these kinds of different things. And because they don't want to, because they listen to us, because remember they listened to us when they copied our 18-year, after they put licks on the household and they copied the 18-year, and then
lots of things. This program informs lots of decisions.
Lots of decisions. All the listening here right now, and so on, right? So it's not we, but we have argued one. The Buxton proposal gives a frame. Okay, you criticize it. So I have moved away from Buxton proposal and say, do a green paper, just like this. Do a green paper on cash transfer, in which all the issues can be put down. Have this green paper circulated and let everybody put in their inputs and so on. When we finish and we have a green paper in principle, we turn it over to the legal people, the legal drafts people, and let them draft an act. A cash transfer and benefits act, or whatever act you want, a patrimony act, whatever you want, setting out all the different things and so on, right? Including what amounts can be made available from year to year for the purpose of the transfer. And all the other things, including what Suriname has done, they're not going to be paying this money in any hands. If you don't have a bank account, they will help you set up a bank account. That's how it must work. Because the cash transfer must also achieve other objectives. tax objectives, income distribution objectives, understanding better who the population and so on, and the age groups and so on. That is what a cash transfer will do, depending on how it's structured. But right now, all you could say is that this was designed for votes next year.
Yeah, it's a procurement process.
Right? For votes next year.
Yeah.
Right?
It's a voter procurement process. Right. We're going to put up on the screen the receipts
for the
signing bonus as it is defined publicly. This is evidence, ladies and gentlemen, that the monies that the government of Guyana, led by President David Arthur Granger, and the economy at the time managed by former minister now, Mr. Winston Jordan, they stand accused of at one time stealing the money, and now at this juncture, Mr. Jagdeo, attempting to steal the money. So here's the irrefutable evidence that the money was in fact properly accounted for. This is a receipt.
And this is the second one.
This is the second receipt. And the monies were deposited with the Bank of Guyana. And we'll leave it there for a minute so you can get your cameras out. You can screenshot there, and you can share it with your friends, share it with your family members, and you can ensure that when we stand accused in the future by the trolls, that you can share it with them as well. And if anyone has contact with Mr. Jagdeo, who's watching, that is apart from Mr. Jagdeo himself, who's also watching, please send him a photograph of these receipts. Mr. Jordan, it has been a full almost 2 hours. And I want to thank you very much for availing yourself.
More, if I could just quickly, I don't know, Mr. 2 minutes. Sure. If you have 2 minutes.
Sure.
Right. Because he also said how they did some study on tax by car tax.
Right, the 16%.
And when I came in, I dusted off this study.
Yes.
And implemented it and so on.
Yes, he said that.
Well, at least one person called me and was very indignant to hear such. Because let me tell you something. First of all, there was no car tax study that was done prior to 2015. None on this tax, on this tax. What was done was a study by Duke University. It was called the Duke Report on Tax Reform. Right? The Duke Report on tax. And it was done under Ramatar. Okay? When the report was submitted, Ramatar government did nothing with it. And he said as much, that they had this report, but they did nothing. But he called car tax report. It wasn't car tax report, was the Duke, was called the Duke Report. When I came in, the mess that we saw in the tax was horrible. Mess. You know, I mean, it was taxes all over the place, exemptions all over the place, people coming to the ministry, you know, requesting concession as they were accustomed to, friends getting concession, all kinds of stories. And we said, no, I said I can put an end to this nonsense. In fact, I went 2016 to, I think it's GMSA. I told them in no uncertain terms, I will not entertain individuals coming to my office requesting individual concessions. If a concession must be given, it must be given to the sector or the industry. I'm not giving concessions to individuals, you know. Well, maybe one of the reasons why they like me, but I really don't care. I didn't looking for, I wasn't a beauty contest. But anyway, I immediately established a tax reform committee. This committee, as everybody remembers, was headed by Dr. Morris Odell. And it included Christopher Ram, Godfrey Stacia, and Dr. Thomas Singh from the University of Guyana. They produced their report on January 18th of 2016. But if you remembered, the 2016 budget was presented on January 16th. So I did not have their study as yet to implement in the 2016 budget. When I read their report, they were making some recommendations that I felt were going to be a bit contentious. So while I was waiting for the 2017 budget presentation in which I would have done some of the recommendations. I approached CARTAC, which is the acronym for Caribbean Technical Assistance Center, which comes under the International Monetary Fund, and they are based in Barbados. I approached CARTAC to undertake a similar study. I want to see what they will come up with. I approached them in May. They completed the study. So I now had two studies, our local one headed by Dr. Morris Odell and the CARTAC study. And in many ways, they came up with more or less same or similar recommendations, including, of course, one or two contentious ones, of course. You know the 2017 budget had serious tax changes and tax adjustments and so forth. All right, and as they say, the rest is history. The number of positives that we had in our tax reform, many industries call us and thanked us for what we did. All the smuggling, all this kind of thing had declined, not disappeared, had declined. Cigarette smuggling, alcohol smuggling, all this we tackled head on, right? And one of the changes we made, he talking about how $90 billion was pulled out of the economy and all that. When you're pulling out money from one place, it's go another place to spend it, whether by investment or consumption. It's just a different set of people. But in that 90 billion, I haven't checked it, but let me assume that is correct. Part of that 90 billion came from the government itself. Why? Because we had introduced taxation on government expenditure. Yes. Part of the reform was tax. So you're no longer getting tax-free government vehicle.
That is true. I remember that very, very clearly because I worked at the ministry.
Correct.
During that time.
You had to pay the taxes due on the government vehicle.
Yeah. Some people didn't understand or appreciate.
No. So they're running around with, oh, we take out $90 billion from taking this. No, part of that came from the government. A big chunk of it came from the government itself. And of course, I don't have to remind you about the reduction in VAT and the reduction in Barbados River Bridge tolls and reduction in income tax, all these different things that we did, But we were out of time. But next time we are going to be able to add more to this thing.
It might interest you, Mr. Jordan, as we wind down, to know that obviously the PPP are tracking the program. We know that they have the intelligence arm of the army doing it, as well as the special branch of the police force. But operatives of the PPP, Jagdio looks at it as well.
Yeah, of course.
Now, Action News, how are you doing? I understand that you have, in retaliation almost to Nation Watch exposure by Mr. Winston Jordan, you have launched a rebroadcast of Mr. Jagdio's press conference. Best of luck to you. I hope people have the stomach to look at it once.
No, but I'm happy they did, because now the people can put side by side, okay, and make their own judgment, because all they had, or mostly what they had, is based on what he was saying.
Yeah.
So a rebroadcast is not an explanation to what I put out here.
It's not.
It's just a rehash of the same thing, which people are now going to say, hey.
It's an attempt to flood the media space.
You're not debunking what Mr. Jordan just now said.
Nah, the attempt is to flood the media space, but the truth always prevails.
Well, the truth will always prevail.
So thank you very much once again, Mr. Jordan, for availing yourself and to bring with you the facts. Ladies and gentlemen, we have taken more of your time today than usual, but it was necessary for your own information purposes. As we approach Christmas, we want to celebrate with clean hearts and clean souls. We don't want to have duplicity as part of our media diet. And as you recognize today, the word for today was duplicitous. And, I believe that the discussion was worth your time, and I thank you very much for joining and staying with us. Enjoy the rest of your day, and until we meet again. And before I go there, I want to say to you that the information provided you is principally to allow you to make sensible, wise decisions on elections day, whenever it is named. Until we meet again next Sunday, by God's grace, be safe. God bless you.